Hello, everybody, and welcome to Faster Masters Rowing Radio, where having a rowing coach only makes you better, following a program that gives you a true pathway to becoming a confident rower who's respected by your peers. You can become the athlete that you want to row with. I'm Rebecca Caroe, and as ever, I am joined by my colleague, Marlene Royle.
Hello, Rebecca and Faster Masters. Nice to see everybody.
Absolutely. And I'd like to start off with a little bit of an apology, which is that we are not broadcasting this at the normal time because I've been traveling this week. So this is being recorded at a time that suits us, but we'll be sure to send the link around. If you're in our newsletter, you will pick it up as usual. Now, if you feel that you get good tips from our podcast, we'd welcome some support, some financial support. If you go to our website, fastermastersrowing.com/podcast, you can make a donation starting from $1. And let me say, we really appreciate every single one of you lovely people who recognizes the value that you get from us and is prepared to show it with a financial contribution. Thank you. This past week, this is where we talk about the work that we're doing to more broadly advocate for Masters rowing around the world. What have you been up to?
Well, my week has been filled with introducing new Masters scullers to our sport. So, as I kind of every week give you a little update on my club here in Knowlton, which is new. And we've had tremendous interest in the local community. A lot of people are quite sportive here and like aerobic sports. So now that they're starting to see sculling out on the lake the past couple of seasons, there's a lot of interest. And I had probably about 15 lessons this week of teaching some people who have never rowed before. So it was their first time in a boatyard, first time sitting in a boat, first time, hands-on. So it was quite interesting. Some people had a little bit of rowing experience many years ago, and some had zero. And we had our first group sessions tomorrow. We had yesterday. And had 2 groups of 5 out on the water, and we start with the crossover and the blade work, and how to look around how to steer, how to look around. So that's been really fun. And as I was telling Rebecca before we started, it a little bit of a shock, after this COVID year of not seeing a lot of people to all of a sudden be coaching a whole bunch of people live, So it's just, I'm used to doing that, but having been out of it since last fall, really, and not seeing a whole lot of people over the winter, it's like, wow, there's people out there. People like to talk about this stuff. People are having fun. It's so nice to see expressions on people's faces, and I think going back to if everybody listening, think about the first time you rowed. The first time you rowed. If you love rowing, you're just ecstatic, and you can always remember the first day that you got in a boat. And I remember for me, it was like, I got in the boat, I was like, that's it. Like I was 14 years old. I said, that's it. I'm never doing anything else. That was it. Like there was no question about it. That was it. And it's so interesting to see some people who it clicked for, and they're like, this is it. This is my new sport. This is it. So quite, it's exciting. It's fun.
It is, and it's great to see that joy when you've introduced the sport to someone else. So my past week is actually a forward week. I am in the UK right now, and I am going to be at the Henley Masters Regatta next week, the 9th, 10th of July. And I very much hope that some of our listeners are going to be around and maybe competing. And so do come and say hi. I'm competing in a double scull in the E category. It's a combination crew of Champion of the Thames and North Shore. I'm the North Shore bit. So do come say hi. We're definitely racing. We've got 1 race I know on Friday. And if we get through that, then we've got possibly 2 on Saturday. So yeah. It'll be good to meet people.
Possibly, yes, you will get through that, and yes, you will have races on Saturday. So we're already planning for it. So everybody, I say, send power thoughts. Friday race time, send power thoughts. It all counts. Universal energy.
Yeah. I'll be over the jet lag as well by then, which will probably be a good thing. Now, we have the new program for the Faster Masters rowing program out, obviously, for July, and it's a transition month. So I thought we'd just run through some of the things that are in the program. Some people are still racing or training for a 1K race, which is going to be probably in August or September. Other people have already completed their 1K racing and are moving over to the 5K fall program. So it's a kind of interesting month because we kind of fall between two peaks. No one's peaking. And as a result, we're putting a big focus on mid-race strategies. So I've written a detailed article, which we said, right, we did the Racing Starts Challenge. Actually, if anyone still wants it, the VIP is still there if you want to buy it and get in and learn about that. But what about mid-race? And I did some research, and would you believe it? I couldn't find a single article about mid-race strategies.
I believe that. It's sort of like, oh, you start and finish, but what about the middle? It's like sort of like the gray zone, and it is the gray zone. And that's exactly why picking out some of these strategies was really key, because people get lost in the middle of the race, like, oh, and your brain power, your thinking capability decreases the farther you get into the race as well.
Yeah. So what I put into the email, which you will be getting, is to write out your race plan. We already talked about that during June, but amend it. Let's do a second version now. And let's use this month when we're between racing peaks to practice and discipline ourselves to be able to do these moves without having to think. As your brain fades, as the oxygen goes out of your brain.
Really, yes.
Automatically is really, really important. Marlene recommends that you try and find some local people to do some practice races against. And remember, if you're not the same speed, one way to do that is to do handicap races. So say you want to do 3 1K pieces, do the first one with everyone starting at the same time. Then do the second one with a staggered start based on the finish time. So if one boat finishes 3 lengths ahead of another, approximately it's about 3 seconds per length. So give them a 9-second head start, or a 9-second delay, sorry, depending on which crew you're talking about. And then hopefully they will all finish at the finish line very close together. So you'll get some close finishes. And that's really worthwhile doing because it allows you to see relative boat speed. And it doesn't matter then if you have people of vastly different experience. You can all line up and race together. What else is? I think that's pretty much everything, isn't it? That's in our program.
Well, we've got some really cool videos in there. That's nice. And we talked about our blade work. We devoted some time to blade work.
Squaring.
Yep.
Squaring. Yep.
Right. As Rebecca writes, as simple as it sounds. Maybe it's a number one problem. Squaring and feathering. It really challenges that left-right coordination, so yeah, got to spend time on it. You can't get better at it if you don't spend time on it. It's impossible.
Yeah, that is totally true. And I've invented a new drill for you to practice, so you'll see that in the article. Our big topic today is about motivation. Getting out of bed in the morning to go rowing isn't easy for all of us, and it isn't easy all the time. So we've all, I'm sure, experienced moments when motivation has faded off. What are the strategies that you can use, firstly, to recognize when this is happening, and then to, kind of get your mojo back? Marlene's been doing the research.
Well, I think if you have problems with motivation, you have to back up, first of all, and try to evaluate exactly what's going on. Because why were you motivated at one point and now you're not motivated? So you might say, maybe your goals have changed, right? Maybe you were really motivated and you had this goal to do X. Now, perhaps a couple of months have gone by, some time has gone by, and perhaps that X isn't that important anymore. Okay. So you're not going to be motivated to do something that's not important to you. If something is important to you, then you have to ask yourself, you know, I'm not doing X, but I know that X is important to accomplishing my goal. So, for example, there was a really, I think when we were talking to, it might have been when we were talking to Adam Creek in the Racing Starts Challenge, or it might have been in one of our conversations in that preparation, that, you know, Adam said, well, you know, it was a really crappy day out, you know, and in Victoria, BC in winter, you know, it's rowable, but there can be cold rain and there's some very unpleasant days. So, you know, they put their pair on the water and then they decided, oh, we're not going out. We're going to go on the ergs or something. And Mike Spracklin, who was their coach, walks up to them and said, well, you know, I guess not everybody can go and be an Olympic champion, you know, and right after that, they were like, damn, we're putting our boat back on the water. We better get to work. Right. So I just think that this is really interesting, you know, kind of, well, first think about what your decision is. Okay, it's natural sometimes motivation is going to fade, but put it in the context. Like the Canadian women's lightweight double right now, they said, oh, our coach told us, oh, the water's too rough. Well, you know, just call up Tokyo and tell them to make sure it's only good water when you're racing in your Olympic final, right? So, suck it up, cupcake kind of thing. But anyway, you know, going back to real causes. James Loehr, who is a very well-known author of peak performance books, has a book called The Power of Full Engagement and the Dynamics of Energy. Now, I have not read this book yet, and I learned about it through a podcast, but I have followed Jim Loehr's work for a long time. And one of the things that he defines and talks about in this book, which he also talks about in his peak performance book, The Mental Toughness Training of Sport, is you have to look at things, at your energy in a pyramid, okay? The base of the pyramid is your physical level. The next level is your emotional level. The next level is your mental level. The next level is your spiritual level at the top of the pyramid. So we've got physical at the bottom, emotional, mental, spiritual. And your physical is the base of the pyramid. So first of all, let's say, you know, motivation could be emotional. It could be mental. Okay, so it's something happening on, say, level 2 or 3. If there's an issue there, let's drop down to the physical and say, what's going on? Like, are you eating well? Are you tired? Have you been sleeping? You know, do you have an injury? Are you sore? I mean, you know, go down to the physical and look at what's been going on in your body, in your diet, in your physical surrounding. Like, it's really noisy. You didn't sleep all night. I think probably 80% of the time you're going to find your reason why your motivation is fading in the physical component of things, because quite frankly, if you're tired, it's really hard to push yourself. So your emotions are going to be down, you know, and you're more likely to be more emotional about things when you're tired. You know, you can't, I mean, just from a mental training point of view, you cannot deal with pain and discomfort as well when you're tired. So, you know, that's first thing,
torture, isn't it? That is a torture method, is sleep deprivation, and that's
it is absolutely. And also things, you know, just like you're not giving your body the food that it needs. You're not giving your body what it needs to have energy. Or are you wasting energy on things you shouldn't be wasting energy on? You know, so I think first, you know, go to the physical and say, well, what's going on with my environment? What's going on with my body? What's going on with my sleep? Rebecca and I both use the HRV for Training app that gives us a little index every morning that says, you're yellow today. You need to limit intensity, or you're on track and you're stable. Like maybe you're tired, but you're stably tired. You know what I'm saying? Like this is because in this sense, normal is good. And then you go up, you say, okay, well, maybe physically everything's really pretty good, but mentally I'm not feeling that good. And then you say, okay, well, what's below that? The emotional level. So my boss yelled at me yesterday, or, I'm not getting along with one of my kids, and something's happening that's got me stressed out. So then that's going to start to hit you, your emotional feeling is going to start to get you in the mental zone. And this is, I think, where the motivation comes in, that you're responding to something. And one of the interesting things that they were talking about in this podcast was, somebody maybe did something that emotionally upset you, and you're all up in arms about this, but that person might be totally clueless. Like they have no idea they upset. Most of the time, people don't even have any idea that they upset you, and they're not trying to do things to you. So it was kind of interesting that like you might be overreacting emotionally to something that in fact is a figment of your imagination and really didn't happen, and nobody intended it that way, which I thought was really quite interesting. And maybe in your rowing session, your coach gave you some feedback and you started interpreting this into something much more than what it was. How many athletes do that when they're in a selection situation? And so I think lack of motivation, try to work backwards and say, well, how did I feel last week at this time? Did I feel okay? And what changed, or what events happened between I was feeling really good 2 days ago and what changed your status? I think that's the thing, is just that self-awareness of what happened that changed the way you feel. Like you said, like, oh God, I got this bill and I just wasn't expecting this. And what I'm going the best stress reliever is to take action. Do something. Just do something. Just write down your feelings, or just write down a note, or just make a phone call. Or, I think oftentimes, the brain doesn't like to store things. The brain likes action. So oftentimes, if you're lacking motivation, put your running shoes on, put your rowing trowel on. Atomic Habits, he says one thing that I think is really funny. So you come home from work, you're tired, you have to do your workout, blah, 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 but you're dragging your butt. Well, put your yoga pants on, because if you put your yoga pants on, you're not going to go to the bar and have a drink. So I just think it was like, great. So, habit, you put your run, you fill your water bottle. Well, when you fill your water bottle, you're going to put it in your rowing bag, and then you're going to put your rowing bag in the car or in your bike, and then you're going to go to the boathouse. So, like start to link these things, and motivation, will say, oh, you're not feeling like doing this. Yeah, but you just filled your water bottle. So that means we're going out, so, I think you have to do those tricks. When it's not serious, or if it's serious, rest. Take an extra day off and go be by yourself for 2 hours if that recharges you, or go to a party if that recharges you. Depends what recharges you. So
certainly that little things like that are called nudges in behavioral economics. And nudge to, you put your shoes by the bed when you go to bed, so that when you wake up in the morning, everything's there and all you have to do is put it on. And it's hard if you trip over the shoes, it's like, I can't.
Yeah, right. It's kind of like the dog coming with the shoes in the mouth, right? Like,
oh yeah, bringing it.
Time to go out, right?
I want to walk. Yeah, that's right. So these are great strategies. Thank you. And we have a couple of comments. Eric saying it makes a huge difference. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the next comment is about something different. Have we finished talking this topic, or we've got more?
I think so, yes.
Flashing back, Eric says, I got a blast from the past when you mentioned Coach Spracklin. I rode with his son, Adrian. A big
okay.
world. Well, isn't
Yes.
that nice? Yeah.
Yes. And I believe Adrian, I don't know if it's still the case now, but Adrian was the athletic director at Mercyhurst College in Pennsylvania for quite a number of years. So I don't know if he's still doing that, but I know that he was back in the
day.
Early 2001-2 era. So
Oh, cool. Thanks, Eric. That was great. I want to talk now a little bit about head racing, 5K, long distance racing. And the reason is that it's one of those things that we do in the winter, in the fall. You know, there are big events. There are some seriously high profile events which are on everybody's rowing bucket list, whether it's the head of the Yarrow or the head of the Charles or the Eights head of the River in London. And doing well in head racing is something that takes an enormous time investment. And you cannot race a long endurance race without good, robust training under your belt. It's now around sort of 4 or 5 months out from the really big dates that most of them fall, I think, in October, November, and then there's a few more fall in sort of March time. This is the time when actually you're going to be putting your pennies into your little piggy bank.
totally.
That is going to see you right by the time it gets around to head racing. Marlene, what's the physiology of doing a long distance race?
Well, it depends how hard you row, but yes, in general, I would say what you're looking for is think about your average speed, because a head race is usually it's a time trial format. So over a time, I mean, even though you may pass crews and other boats and have challenges within there and steering and things like that, think of it like a time trial. So you've got to get from A to B the best way possible. So that aiming to train to improve your base average speed is what you want to focus on. And then you also have to layer on top of that knowing your course, because if you're on a river, there may be certain places like you don't want to go against the stream here. You want to go with the current here. You want to be here on the curve or buoy, weeds, etc. You have to know your course. But in general, let's treat it like a time trial that, you want to get from A to B at the best possible speed. So that means you want your best average speed. So the ways that you're going to improve your best average speed are by training your volume, your base aerobic. Okay, that's, you're developing those mitochondria, which are really big for that physical base of your motivation too. Your little batteries in your cells are your mitochondria. But developing your aerobic base, your technique, that happens at low intensity, and then you build that up. But your race pace is basically going to be like an anaerobic threshold workout. So if you can ride that line of rowing your best possible pace before you start to really get slowed down by, say, lactic acid and just too much, like you're just overextending in the race. Let's say, you want to get right up to that ceiling of the best speed that you can maintain without going over that edge. So that takes practice, obviously. But at this time of year, I think that you need a good endurance base. But I think it's good in the early summer and the middle summer to do some work where you, even if you're not racing 1K, you improve your VO max. Okay, your high end fitness. So you do some intervals to just raise your level of fitness at the high end, and then you have a higher ceiling. So then you can train and you can move that anaerobic threshold up, because that anaerobic threshold is your average speed. So if you can hold a better average speed without falling off the edge of the knife, so to speak, you're going to go faster from A to B. So from a physiological point of view, that becomes our focus in training, but we still mix in other things, because you have to,
variety.
You have to do all kinds of things in a race. Like you might come, like when Leslie in the Racing Challenge talked about, like, oh my God, we had to come to a complete stop from full speed, and then we had to start again, you know. So you still have to develop little speed work skills, blade work skills. That's a new word, blade work skills. But from a physiological point of view, you want to be able to stay at that 85% effort as long as possible. At the end of the race, go for it. You know, at the end, when you know the end is there, just you know, the best you can do, right? But you've got to race it aggressively. You know, like I think we've talked about this in the past. Like treat it like a 2K. I think a lot of people go out way too conservatively, and you know, you've got to get into that race rhythm right away. We've talked about that in the past. But you know, don't be too conservative in the beginning, because you'll be surprised if you're prepared and you start now. Like, don't wait until September to say, oh, guess what? You know, and this happens all the time, single scholars, or August. Oh, guess what? I got into the head of the Charles. I need to start training. And I'm like, in my mind, like the majority of your training should have been done by now. And in September, like, oh, my team boat got into the head of the Charles. Time to start training. I'm like, it's time to start like sharpening and winding down. The training should be done. I mean, so plan ahead. You cannot make some of these adaptations in a month. You know, you might satisfy yourself that you can get down the course, but if you focus on this starting in the spring and the summer, you know, you're going to do so much better.
Yeah, I've got a little tip for people who are training partly on the erg, but also in the boat for those long endurance sessions. And it's this: look at the layout of the screen that you use, whether it's on your speed coach or your whatever app you use, or if it's on the monitor for the erg, and display your average speed or your average meters per second. And also when you're on the erg, you can do the projected distance. This is really, really useful because it gives you something that you can monitor right from the beginning of the piece. So like today I did a 30-minute piece on the erg, rate 16, you know, deliberate session. And it's about good technique and consistent strokes. And I was looking at two things. I was looking at the projected meters that was, you know, coming up through to the end. And I was also looking at my average split. So it was a 500-meter split. And particularly in, you know, the mid piece, when you're in that sort of, you know, you've done a quarter of it and it's like, oh my God, the finish looks like it's such a long way into this. What am I going to do? I start to look at things like that average split, because when you start off, your average split is always really bad. You started from nothing, you know, and it takes a few minutes before the machine begins to display an average that is even remotely the same as what you see on the stroke by stroke count of your split. And that's really good. So I will often look at that and whatever split I'm doing, and it gives it to a decimal point as well. And so you can start and think things like, I'm going to see how many strokes it takes to change that by 0.1 and see if I can get it from whatever 0.5 down to 0.4. And you count the strokes, you know, and it might be 28 or it might be 30 strokes, and you're not going to change anything else much. You're just looking at consistency. Stick on your rating. Make sure that you're trying to be super consistent with the split you're getting every single stroke. And what happens is that average just nudges up, and you might find that it takes you 30 strokes and you've notched it 0.1 closer to what you're rowing at. And that just gives you a tiny little focus. And I find that super useful.
Absolutely. And shifting your attention, you know, so that you're not just, you know, getting lost out there. You've got something, you know, because we do want to focus on covering the entire distance. And, you know, that's a nice way. Another interesting, like, little trick, or, you know, that you can use is the meters per second. And for example, there are charts out there for example, with the I know for the Head of the Charles, there's a chart of if you want to row such and such a time, you need to row this many meters per second. And so that, so that's just another way to work on the same thing, but you might like tune into that a little bit easier than one thing. So, you want to find like what gives you the motivation. And Cece has a really good question here for us. Should I read it out? It says, from Cece, hi Cece, you found us at this odd time of day. So if you are racing 1,000 meters in August and head races starting in late to mid-September, does the Faster Masters program include the workouts you need to get the interval short race training as well as the longer AT training? Yes. So here's what I would do, okay? If you are focusing on 1,000 meters, in this case, this may be the U.S. Masters Nationals in this particular instance, stay on the 1K program. Okay, stay on the 1K program. On the non-priority days, get in the Cat 6 distance work, but for the most part, stay on the 1K program. Then when you finish Masters Nationals, and this is good, this will be in the August program. When you finish your event in August, take a couple days off and recuperate. Okay, you're gonna need it. Don't go straight into head race thing. Like take 3 or 4 days off and chill and decompress after a big event like that, because you may think you can, I got to get training. You're tired and you've been doing a really hard training phase, and you've got to mentally recover from that so that you go in fresh to the next phase. So after the event, few days off, mandatory, few days off, even a whole week, if that's going to help you like catch up on life and take care of all the stuff you weren't doing when you were training hard last month. Then go to the 5K program and pick up the 5K program where it is, because you've been doing the high intensity work. You've been doing the 1K work, the VO max work. You're prepared. So now you're going to shift it. You're going to shift into some of the more AT endurance pieces, but don't build more intensity into the program that is already there. Okay. Don't say, I'm going to take this from the 5K and put it in on an extra day. Don't do that. Stick to the intensity that's prescribed, complete your peak at nationals, take a break, let your body, and it's more your mind in this case. It's not so much your body, but it's your mind and your focus, regenerate, and then shift to the 5K program.
And don't forget, even on the 1K program right now, there are endurance pieces in there at low rate. So you are building that exact physiology that we're encouraging while you are still doing the 1K work. So the plan is there. It's there.
Yeah. But what you don't want to do is don't mush the two plans together and think that you're getting more. That is a big, big, big mistake. Stick to one. It's just like we talked about in the past, people trying to follow Faster Masters and then trying to follow a different clubs program or 2 different programs. Like, don't do that. Stick to one program, because otherwise your intensity is going to be too high and it's going to come back and it's going to bite you in the butt later.
Exactly. You need the endurance base for rowing. Rowing is a strength endurance sport. I had a season where, when I was younger, a reasonably inexperienced coach said, we won't do so much of that sort of long, boring stuff. Let's do the short, fun stuff. And guess what? We all faded in the third quarter of the race.
And it's not boring. That's another topic for a podcast, because the boring long distance, if it's boring long distance, we need to have a talk, right? So
we'll note that for another time.
Absolutely. But yes, Cece, you will be, follow the 1K, get that. You're getting in, the start, the power work, that kind of stuff is all really, really good. That's going to help you in your head race season. But, just keep your mind on the 1K, like go win medals, and then we'll think about the next thing. Okay. So that's what we want.
Fantastic. I think that's all we've got time for today. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in and sitting along with us. This has been Faster Masters Rowing Radio. the show dedicated to masters athletes who want fun, fitness, and confidence in their rowing. You can become a student of the sport by buying a Faster Masters Rowing program subscription today. Go to fastermastersrowing.com/join. Till next time, bye-bye.